the lockdown in New South Wales had a few people a little confused as to exactly what essential work is. That has been the carve-out through essentially every lockdown we've had in this country. But there has been controversy after there has been a case at Goulburn. The person there, the essential worker, apparently a painter coming from Sydney. Joining me live now is political consultant Jim Middleton. Thanks for your time. The construction work was on a hospital upgrade, which is obviously important, but whether or not you could source a painter from somewhere other than Sydney was the question. And the Health Minister got pretty testy over this one with our former political reporter James Doherty there working for Daily Telegraph, asking him a few questions, and Brad Hazzard didn't seem too happy.
Is that right? Sorry, I wasn't sure whether you were going to go to a grab there. Look, Tom, yes, it is a difficult question, no doubt about it, but I think it's fair to say that in Victoria last year during the worst of the lockdown, the fact that there was a fairly rigorous definition there of what was or wasn't an essential worker did in the end contribute to the ability of Victoria to get out of lockdown a little bit earlier than might have been the case, otherwise been the case, and also too, Tom, to making it easier for the contact tracers to keep things under control, to get on top of the virus. So I'm a little bit bemused, a bit like James Doherty as well, about this issue and the idea that people should use common sense. Well, if it's common sense on the part of workers, why can't it be common sense on the part of the authorities as well? There's an additional problem here too that I think is the case. If retail outlets, for example, it's up to the discretion of the operators to determine whether or not they stay open, well, then this means that their employees are at their beck and call. Now, statistics would suggest, for example, that in the most affected local government areas in Sydney, 9 out of 10 casual contacts have been in either shops or shopping centres. So what you're doing is not only living a situation where the health of the workers and their likelihood that they are going to contract COVID are enhanced, but also that of shoppers too. Now, if what you want to do is to shut this down as quickly as possible, get on top of it, which is not where the New South Wales authorities are yet, despite the slightly optimistic numbers today, then it seems to me that having a fairly rigorous determination on what are essential services is a very, very useful tool to have in your kit bag.
One of the things eventually Brad Hazzard said in response is, well, with the greatest respect, I'll take my advice from epidemiologists and public health officials who give the advice. But this is after he was saying essentially, well, you know, it's too difficult. This is what I think people find frustrating about this. Medical advice, fine, sure. First of all, it's rarely just do this. It's a menu of options, and also using it as sort of a crutch and saying, well, good luck, you cannot question the medical advice, as if they would have said, oh, definitely don't define what an essential worker is. I mean, that strikes me as a political decision. They can tell you, you know, how much movement, who should be able to work, how many people should, you know, be out there in the community, and surely it's a political decision around, right, what's a really essential worker to keep the economy going?
Look, it is a balance of judgment, is it not? But the New South Wales government, it seems to me, to be fairly rigorous in certain aspects of this about people not obeying the lockdown laws in relation to getting out in the community and so on and so forth, fines being issued and that sort of thing. So they can define that very, very clearly, it seems, but they seem, for whatever reason, and is it ideological? Is it a residue of the old gold standard New South Wales that we can do things differently and be successful, that they simply aren't prepared to be rigorous in deciding what is an essential service? In Victoria, it was quite simple. It was supermarkets, service stations, chemists, and fast food outlets. It was pretty much as far as retail was concerned. Bunnings, for example, could do trade supplies to the building industry, but not retail work. So it was pretty clear, and it did work, and that's the point. Do you want to get on top of this, or do you not? Do you want to maintain your political proclivities as a vanity, or do you actually want to get it done?
And look, I totally get why people would want to stay open. If I were running a business, I was allowed to. There's every chance you would, and you can have a debate around what should be the approach, living with COVID and so on. But if, as you say, the New South Wales governments decide to get as close to zero as possible, we'll figure out how to do it. Hey, the other announcement coming today, New South Wales getting some assistance. It's not JobKeeper. It sounds quite similar to it, I've got to say. What have you made of this? It's a moving feast in terms of federal support when supposedly the parameters were set post-JobKeeper not that long ago during the Victorian lockdown.
Well, look, we were assuming, were we not, that lockdowns were pretty much a thing of the past. What we've seen with the Delta variant and what's happened in New South Wales is clearly that they're not. One point, going back to what you were saying about retail or other businesses being essential or not, this is, I think, a difficulty for the New South Wales government to date, the fact that there was not JobKeeper. That was one thing that did make it much easier for the Victorian government last year to determine whether or not which businesses to lock down, because they knew that JobKeeper was there to support the workers, keep them connected to the businesses, and therefore when things opened up, they'd have jobs again. The absence of that to date has, I think, made things more difficult for the New South Wales government, and I'm very relieved to see that we're finally getting some common sense and will get what appears to be something close to JobKeeper 2.0 this afternoon, although we're not going to call it that. It does appear that the amount will be enhanced. There will be a situation, I very much doubt whether the current requirement that was imposed with the Victorian lockdown, where you've got to go and sign up every week to confirm that you're still being stood down, etc., etc., that won't apply. So it does appear that it will be pretty close to JobKeeper 2.0, and if that is the case, well, good on Scott Morrison and very good effort on the part of Gladys Berejiklian and also to Dominic Perrottet for getting the feds to overcome their initial misgivings and their intransigence, it has to be said.
We'll find out soon enough, that announcement coming up this afternoon. Jim Middleton, thank you.